Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox-Rubin.
I'm David Katzmeyer.
Google and Amazon have been feuding for well over a year now, and both have been pushing into each other's main businesses. But the relationship appears to have thawed a bit today. Katz, what happened?
Well, they finally buried the hatchet. These guys have had YouTube and Fire TV and Chromecast issues for a while. Long story short, now you can watch the YouTube app on Fire TV. That's coming in a couple months. And you can watch Prime Video using Chromecast. So these two things haven't been in the past. There's been a workaround with YouTube on Fire TV for a while using a browser. This is the official YouTube app coming soon. There's going to be Alexa integration, all this other stuff. So they're basically doing what has already been on Roku and Apple TV for a while, extending that functionality from Prime Video and YouTube to Chromecast and Fire TV.
Do you think that there was any sort of impetus as to why this happened today? Like, what was, if you had a theory, if you were a betting man?
Yeah.
Why do you think that they finally came to the table and made this agreement?
Well, I think one of the big things is that both of those devices need to compete against Roku and Apple TV, especially Roku, which is, again, continuing to outsell both of them. I think that they just want to level that playing field and basically say, hey, you know what? If you're buying one of these devices, if you're buying one of these televisions with this built-in streaming service platform,
you're going to get YouTube.
Yeah, finally.
You're going to get actual YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube won't be broken.
So speaking of YouTube being broken, or what the previous workaround was, how much of a difference is this going to be for customers? Are people going to really notice a substantial difference? Because I know I have an Echo Show. Mm-hmm. I have YouTube on there. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close to what you would expect to have with the app.
Yeah, so I don't think you're going to notice it immediately. There's going to be some slight improvements, but the biggest thing is Alexa. So you can't, ask for stuff right now. And actually you can, but it doesn't work as consistently. The other thing about Echo Show is that this app isn't necessarily coming to your Echo Show. It's only really announced right now for Fire TV. So Echo Show is still a question mark. I think eventually the YouTube app will come to Echo Show as well. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Next up, many reviewers are complaining that the new Samsung Galaxy Fold is failing on them within days.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like I saw this one coming.
Yeah.
And, okay, maybe it's a nightmare scenario. That's what Jessica Dolcourt, our mobile reviewer, says. Mm-hmm. I would probably say that Samsung's been through even worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your impressions?
Well, it was a trial by fire already.
It was a trial by fire.
Boom. But the thing is, Jessica's phone is fine. So we're talking about 4 reviewers here getting early review samples. I don't think the jury, has already rendered a guilty verdict about folding phones. But, it's kind of like, this thing is maybe not as robust as it could be.
Definitely.
Part of the issue is that I guess some reviewers were pulling off this protective screen.
Yes.
Which people do normally when they get a new product.
When you get a new iPhone, you pull the plastic off. This time it was actually a protective screen you were supposed to keep on.
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting. Mark Gurman from Bloomberg was saying, like, how are people supposed to know about this? I'm like, Mark, you just made sure everybody knows about this by screwing up your $2,000 phone. So that was probably, if this was Samsung's evil way of making sure people never pulled off that film, then, that was at least successful.
I don't think this was in the plan.
No. They're not that smart and they're not that stupid.
Right.
Also, our own Ian Scher got to visit Apple's recycling lab where the tech giant breaks apart old iPhones to use their parts in new devices. And lastly, wanted to give a shout out to the Mueller report because that's very big news going on, especially in D.C. these days. It kept D.C.'s attention for over 2 years now. The report is finally out. Check out information about the Mueller report on CNET.com as well as these other stories. And that'll do.
Wow.
I'm Ben Fox-Rubin.
It's a big news day. David Katzmeyer.
Thank you very much for listening.
I've just finished downloading report.pdf. My light reading on the train.
Oh, yeah. Got all the.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us and watching and listening and subscribing and liking and schmoozing and whatever. Let's go ahead and jump into the chat and take some comments and questions about the topics at hand today. Obviously, that foldable phone's going to drum up some controversy, but let's start right off by sashaying back into the Amazon Google controversy.
Nice.
Is that embattlement? What's the right terminology for their little tiff?
I think it's like they made up, it was something that should have been happening, years ago, honestly. It doesn't make any sense for these massively popular streaming devices like Chromecast and Fire TV to not have, YouTube and Prime Video respectively. So yeah, I think it's like kind of duh at this point. Why keep that little bit of the walled garden fence up, knock it down, widen access, better competition, yada, yada, yada. So
not only that, what was interesting was that Amazon and Google at no point could completely burn the bridge
Yep.
to the other side. Google obviously needs Amazon for a variety of services, and getting like booting, for instance, like this would be like a nuclear option. You would get rid of the Amazon app on Android devices, which I think Google could, in theory, do. You could kick it off of the Play Store.
Right.
That would be, the kiss of death for both of them. That's just that's mutually assured destruction. So even though they were kind of having this tiff that was going on related to the YouTube app, from what I heard, the concerns were a lot. Google didn't like how the products were being presented on Amazon, and Amazon was saying certain things that they were trying to encourage people to buy Fire TVs on Amazon as opposed to Chromecasts.
Yeah.
So
I just typed in Chromecast on Amazon, and the first thing that comes up is a Chromecast.
Yes.
So that's probably the user experience that you want if you're Google, selling your products at Amazon's website. And I think
they
that's what it
probably
all
had to
comes
fight
down
for
to.
that.
Oh,
They
of
probably
course.
had to fight specifically to do that. I remember I wrote a story well over a year ago that said Amazon was going to bring back Chromecasts to the website, and then they didn't because they just straight up weren't getting the inventory.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on behind the scenes related to what was going on here. And from a consumer perspective, consumers don't have to deal with this BS anymore.
Yeah.
Where if you are a Prime customer, you want to buy a Chromecast, now you'll be able to do it. There finally is inventory. I don't know actually when that happened, but I was waiting for it to happen for quite a while.
Yeah, so the last Chromecast came out in fall of last year, and it took them a little while to get into Amazon. It wasn't available immediately, but it was there, relatively quickly after it was launched. So
That's interesting.
That product at least was there, but how it's presented is a whole other issue. Amazon can bury whatever search results they want and promote their own stuff, which they do all the time on their own website.
And
so.
I will say this, unfortunately for smaller sellers that are not Google, they do not have the same levers to pull. So Google and Amazon, they obviously have to find ways to work together. If you're a smaller seller that has to go up against Amazon, yes, Jeff Bezos says that, third-party sellers are kicking his butt as far as, their own first-party sales, their own inventory on the site. But if Amazon wants to compete directly against you and you're a smaller mom and pop, it's hard.
You're going to get crushed.
It's difficult. Yeah.
Any other
Kat,
questions?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Ricky was asking if we can now buy a Google Home and whatnot on Amazon.
I don't think the Google Home. No.
Yeah, last time I checked, no. Pretty sure that's still an issue. And that goes back to the Echo Show thing. I mean, I feel like one of the main reasons why there still isn't a YouTube app coming to Echo Show is because Google wants to protect the Google Home Hub, which is their competitor to the Echo Show, which is a screen device that we loved at CNET, by the way. Great product, less expensive than the Echo Show, for example. Protect YouTube on that device, because if you're a little, a talking speaker with a screen on it, YouTube is a pretty basic and awesome thing to have.
It's too much of a direct competitor.
Yeah.
Related to what you said with the Echo Show, that's a really good point there. No version of the Google Home is currently available on Amazon, and I would say pretty confidently that do not expect the Google Home to appear on Amazon. If you're really interested in getting a Google Home, there are many, many other retail sites that are more than happy to sell one to you, including Google's own. Like they have their own retail site that they'll be able to send you a Google Home if you really want it.
Yeah,
So.
and a good explanation on that is that Google and Amazon both view voice as the growth industry as the most important thing to fight over, and maybe they're conceding these little $35 streamers, as something that they don't care as much about keeping share and taking share of. Maybe Google says, you know what, Chromecast is already a third-place streamer compared to Fire TV and Roku. Fine, you guys can have that, and let's fight over Google Home and Alexa.
Yeah, well stated.
I'm thrilled for this because I'm a lazy YouTube watcher. I love to just put it on in the background at home, and it's always a pain in the butt on my Fire TV. So I have the option. I have a Chromecast too. It's not like they're expensive, but it was nice to have the option, I guess, Again, lazy. So I'm excited.
You paid for it.
Yeah.
You paid for it. You should be able to have like these super basic integrations. I mean, honestly, YouTube is like one of the most default apps there is. The fact that this was going on for so long, this whole cat and mouse situation is quite laughable.
Right.
So it's about time they figured out a way to bury the hatchet because, yes, Amazon figured out a workaround for quite a few months now. But, yeah, ultimately this makes a lot more sense, and it makes a lot more sense for customers.
Marion says, I just got frustrated with my Fire TV yesterday and replaced it with a Roku.
Oof.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. And,
I have a Roku
and it costs
TV.
you $30.
Yeah, I have a Roku TV. I talk to Amazon folks all the time, and like I was like, yeah, I have a Roku TV, but I bought it on Amazon, so don't get too mad at me, guys.
Right,
So,
right. And it is still the #1 selling TV on Amazon, so it's crazy.
Yeah.
Timothy asks, do you see Google and Amazon combining forces to compete with Disney Plus or Apple TV?
Oof, that's a good one. I don't know. I don't know if
interesting.
they need to. I mean, for example, Google doesn't really have, and they kind of famously pulled back from their own premium, subscription service, original content, yada yada yada. Amazon is doing pretty well with Prime, and they're pretty much the #2 streaming service after Netflix. So I don't see them necessarily needing to team up. I don't know how that would happen beyond what we just talked about. That's a pretty natural thing to break down those barriers. But yeah, Disney Plus is certainly, maybe to a lesser extent, Apple TV Plus. Both are up and coming, and guys like Amazon are certainly keeping an eye on it. But Amazon has their fingers in so many streaming pies, including their channels play, obviously, Amazon Prime Video, that I think they're less worried about those guys and more about, just kind of consolidating their own wins.
From a regulatory perspective, I would argue that having Google and Amazon work closely together on those direct streaming services would probably get the attention of the FTC or some other regulators, just because there's a lot more attention paid to big tech companies.
They're so big.
They're so big, and the idea of them kind of pushing out a competitor, even if it were Disney or Apple, which have a ton of money, it could be seen as trying to monopolize or trying to corner the market. So in that regard, I would say that it would be very unlikely. But you probably know about this too. As far as like with Apple, the Apple streaming service, I think the expectations are a lot lower than the Disney one. And they were diminished after Disney came out with their service and said like, hey, it's going to be, we actually have details.
They screwed Apple bad. And if you look at Disney's presentation, they had all the streaming services up there, and they showed, a Roku, they showed a Chromecast, they showed a Fire TV, all these things. I would be really surprised if Disney was not immediately available on all of these platforms from day one. Because, that's how Disney needs to go if you're going to compete against Netflix and Amazon.
Yeah, and unlike some of these other big tech players, Disney does not have its fingers in all these other pies, where like Amazon, for instance, is like constantly competing and helping a lot of its partners. So that makes it a little bit easier for, more of a pure play company like that.
Yep.
All right, Katz, we know you're a big proponent of Roku, but pitting Fire TV against Chromecast, which device would you put up in the lead?
Hands down, Fire TV, mic drop. I mean, there's no Chromecast. I'm sorry, Chromecast is neat if you're always on your phone, but to me, the option of a real on-screen display trumps it. I mean, to be able to drive around with a regular remote or with your phone if you want, with Fire TV. That interface is really important on a television. And I think Vizio learned that the hard way when they got rid of their own on-screen display and just went Chromecast a couple of years ago, and then they finally brought it back to massive user complaints. And the fact that Chromecast is not selling as well as Fire TV and Roku, I think, is a pretty good indicator that people really want an actual menu.
A little more robust.
They want a menu on their television.
Your number one is still Roku, though, right?
Yes.
As far as if you're going to talk about what's the best streaming service, what has the best on-screen display.
For hardware, yeah, and televisions, I really like Roku best. They're the most agnostic, and Amazon has its own interface issues. They're really trying to push Amazon content. There's a lot of pluses and minuses, but and Amazon's come a long way in the last year, especially. But I still like Roku best.
I think I'm with you on that one, Katz, because I don't really see the Chromecast and the Fire TV as similar devices. Yes, you can get much of the same content, but it's a completely different path to get there. Yeah, Fire TV is a TV device. Chromecast is a computer extension.
Yep.
They're different things. All right, we got to move on to the Fold. We don't have much time left.
Back to the Fold.
The rekindling of big companies has begun, but this is a slap in the face to Intel, who are under pressure to make 5G possible for 2020 for Apple. And on that note, there are more than a few people in the chat who are interested to see how Apple takes advantage of this opportunity. Ryan says, so do these problems with the Fold open up the door for Apple?
Maybe. I mean, the general impression that people almost always say about Apple is that they like to follow up.
Yeah, they're a fast follower.
Yeah, they're a fast follower or even a slow follower. They're letting Samsung make its mistakes very publicly, and then they could potentially swoop in with a more polished product. In that regard, as we're talking about this, I would like to give Samsung a little bit of credit here for coming out with a completely new form factor that is not very well recognized by the marketplace. And for very knowledgeable tech reviewers, they've almost immediately made, kind of a boneheaded error that borked the phones. So, something like Samsung deserves some level of credit here for at least attempting to do something different, and it's obviously more quote unquote courageous than just removing a headphone jack from a phone, where it's something that existed that you're now taking away. This is a wholly different product.
Yeah, and I think, to be clear, that it's not necessarily the removing of the thing that screwed up the phone. We really don't know. There's some screenshots of the phone, being half the screen works, the other half doesn't, for example. And you gotta say, as a consumer, this is just an experiment, really, by Samsung, and they're basically saying, look, we can do this. Let's prove that we can do this, and then see where it goes. And maybe it goes nowhere because people don't want something that can break that easily, or maybe
for $2,000.
Exactly, and maybe they figure out a way to make it more robust, and look at it as a beta test almost. I like Samsung phones. I've been using them for a long time, and one of the reasons is because they are always first with these cool innovations, and they keep a headphone jack and use an SD card, yada yada yada. So there's a lot to be said for that level of innovation, and I think it's awesome that this product exists. And again, sure, it might break, but let's see what happens with Gen 2 and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think we've been very clear on this podcast to say that unless you absolutely desperately want to try the latest and greatest technology, even when it's still pretty rough and still pretty new, don't buy this phone.
Yep.
You really, I mean, people will buy this phone, but I think they're very much like bleeding edge consumers that have the money to spare to buy a $2,000, more or less prototype. So to assume that people did not expect something like this to happen is not that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Yeah. If it wasn't going to be this, it was going to be something else related to the foldable phone. It's too new and too different for these types of things to not start cropping up. Once the public gets a hold of them, it'll be another controversy, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be really out of character on this one as the typical cynical guy on here when Alfred's not around. But yeah, I applaud Samsung on this one too. I don't think they were banking on this becoming the new revenue generator. It was an experiment. They actually did innovate something in a world of stale technology. Of course, things are going to go wrong, but someone had to wade into that water and step on the first rock. So I still applaud Samsung on this one. On that note, Ricky B says, hey, at least they're not catching on fire.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Is this anywhere
and
near
honestly, what was
the
that? The
battery
Note
gate?
7?
Yeah, you don't get kicked off the plane for having a broken fold. So
but the Note, that was like the 7th iteration of a phone that already existed. So that to me is so much more inexcusable. Whereas with the Fold, it's a totally different phone design. Right. And it's something that we have been talking about for years, and now it's finally coming out. And yeah, Gen 2 is definitely going to be better. Samsung has said all the right things as far as that we're going to stay very committed to this design because they do see it as a future, as having future potential. And as they continue to find ways to make the screens even thinner, then it's going to actually
and the
fit
phone
in your
itself
pocket.
Thinner, and make the screen, the front-facing screen more usable. All those things that are already issues with the Fold that are well known. The other thing with the Note 7 is that they basically pushed the envelope too far with battery technology, and that's what it was. One of these things where they were kind of innovating too much, and in the tech world, we got to give that credit. If you're trying to address battery life,
yes, but that was actually dangerous. That was literally dangerous. So I don't want to give them too much credit. I don't want to give them credit at all, frankly, for the Note debacle.
Okay.
So I'll have to quibble with you on that one. The thing that I think is very interesting related to the Note 7 was the reviews initially were glowing. People really liked that phone. It did push the envelope as much as possible related to like how much technology can we cram into this one device. So reviewers actually did like all the new innovations. Just the problem is that it had a fundamental flaw in it that made it, dangerous.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost Brian.
No, sorry. I got distracted trying to follow on the chat. There was one thing. First and foremost, I wasn't following this last night because I'm in here working on stuff. So shout out to our friend Chris on Twitter for making sure that we were on the right bandwagon there, because I had no idea.
Chris,
and I went down that rabbit hole, and man, that was fun to kind of watch. There is one important takeaway that Samsung does really need to address, and I by no means know how to run a multi-billion-dollar international company, but I'm pretty sure their testing and quality assurance department needs a little bit of a revamp.
Yeah.
If you're going to fire a coach, fire that coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, after those two things in particular, and the thing is, the public doesn't care about any of this stuff. The public doesn't care about this innovation or whatever. All they care about is broken phone that folds and phone that caught fire, both from the same company. And, if you're looking at this from a brand perspective and, you're again in this, okay, whether I choose Apple or Samsung, this might weigh in.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel I'm a little annoyed agreeing with you a bit on this, but I guess you're right that it's easier for Apple to just kind of sit back and wait and be slow and steady with the whole thing. The problem is that I would argue, and you would probably agree, that the innovations that came out of the iPhone for at least the last 3 or 4 years have been pretty lousy. Like, what exactly have they innovated? So, like if they came out with an iPhone this year, there were just two iPhones slapped together with a piece of tape, and they called it the iPhone Fold. Okay, that's innovative. Charge me $2,000 for that.
Oh, they charge
It'd be
you $4,000
$4,000.
easy.
It would be $4,000.
All right, we got to wrap it up pretty quick here. Do we see any of the pre-sales starting to fall off? What are the numbers telling us? What's that story?
We don't know.
Yeah,
as far as
I
the
think they're going to be
pre-sales.
insignificant no matter what. Again, it's a $2,000 phone. I mean, if you're the guy who is sitting there, and Jessica said this in her story, sitting there with your wallet out, ready to order a Galaxy Fold, or better yet, you have a pre-order in, and there's probably plenty of people that are in that boat, knowing phone fanatics out there. This is a good time to go, hey, maybe I should cancel that.
Maybe I should at least wait a couple months
Definitely.
to like let the
Chill out.
not just like the first generation, but like the first batch.
Right,
unless you're buying this as like a first batch, I'm going to keep it in the box and store it in my attic for 25 years. You know, if that's what you want to do as far as like keeping it for your museum of technology, then good for you. You'll be able to buy it for $2,000, and then I don't know. How much would it be worth?
You know what?
Give me
You'll
a
still
guess.
be the only person on the train with the Galaxy Fold in a couple months. So, hold off a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this thing's gonna appreciate that much. What is it? It's a phone. So we'll see what happens. Maybe the one that doesn't work will be worth a lot of money. The reviewer copy,
The reviewer one that busted.
The signed Jessica Dulcourt one. That's who knows. We'll see.
Yeah.
What about the Huawei, real quick? Have we heard anything about it? Because that one right out the gate looked a little bit flimsier to the naked eye. Do we know if there's any potential risks of failure there?
Yes. I think we're still waiting on that one, but seeing how fragile, I guess is the word, or flimsy these foldable screens are, especially when they're being utilized by the public as opposed to a Samsung or a Huawei executive in a very well-manicured situation. The Huawei phone has the screen on the outside as opposed to the inside, which creates much greater potential, I would argue, for something to go wrong. So let's say you're going to throw it into a purse or you're going to put it in your pocket. I can see that going even worse because I think it was Dieter Bohn from The Verge said that if you tap on the phone screen with like kind of your nail, with your finger, it can create an indentation that will then stay there. I mean, like it's a.
That never happens.
I mean, it's not glass. It's not glass.
Well, neither is the OLED screen on the other one. At least it's on the inside. At least it's protected. You know, on the Galaxy Fold. There's very little, again, like when you have your phone, we scratch and trash our phones all the time. We buy cases for them. It's just a no-brainer that you don't want this $1,000 thing that you use literally all day, every day to break. And that's, one of the big questions here is how are they going to cover this for consumers? How are they going to reassure people?
How many times are they going to let you replace
situation?
it?
Yeah, exactly. And this happened with the Pixel 3 with the OLED screen. There was an issue there where Google had to come out and say, we'll cover these things if you show burn-in. So you have to stand behind this as a company and completely say, well, you know what, it doesn't matter, we'll replace it if you want to take a risk with this. And
I think Samsung is going to do that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's kind of a somewhat unfair comparison to say, like, our current phones are so much more robust because these are more than a decade old as far as like the development and the innovation related to that. So this is still the first Galaxy Fold. The screen is going to get more robust. It's going to get better, but not this year.
Yeah.
So, I would say wait and see. I'd still like to play with it a little bit more, but yeah, I probably won't live my life on it.
You'd be super careful, though. You don't want to break that thing.
No, I literally, when it was in the office, I opened and closed it once and then handed it right back to Jessica.
Right. You're like, phew.
I was like, I don't want to be the one to screw this thing up.
Well, you could have broken a great story.
Yeah.
If you broke the Fold.
I could have broken the break.
Yeah, especially since, without a doubt, by design, the Fold is going to be overhandled by douchebags who want to show it off.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, that's the thing you do with it.
Yeah.
Fold it.
All right, everybody.
Check it out.
Thank you, as always, for joining us. We are out of time. We are out of week. Thursday is our Friday, so we'll see you Monday. Ben, you want to take us on out?
Yep, the 359 is available on iTunes, TuneIn, FeedBurner, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, the Amazon Echo, and, of course, CNET.com. Mr. Katzmeyer, thank you very much for joining us on this
Always a pleasure.
Lovely podcast, and we will see you again on Monday.
Have
Thanks,
a wonderful
everybody.
weekend.
Whoop.